Hey there, guys. It's been a while since I've posted a little bit of a video up, and last time was kind of weird when I was in a weird mood, but yeah, deleted it and let it go. But now something that I've been thinking about. Sorry, a little bit of a wake up here, but something I've been thinking about, and it's not just over the current atmosphere of things that we've been going through, not just as a country, but globally. We all know what it is. We can't really say here on this. But I know there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be familiar with this for what I'm going to be bringing up, where others are probably not going to be so familiar or probably haven't heard about it because it was something that uh, at least I know, people my age and a little older and all that stuff were all taught, and I know others were, but we were taught about chemical equivalencies. That's the best thing that I can think of calling it. Um, this would be a good example. There's certain endorphins that your body naturally produces that over time, that if you're presenting these chemicals into your body artificially and on a regular basis, your body starts to slow down and on the production of those equivalent chemicals. It's partly what leads to a lot of different types of addictions. A lot of people can understand it in that method, where, yeah, certain drugs have a chemical equivalency that your body produces, and as long as you're giving an external source to it, your body eventually slows down and stops producing that chemical and becomes reliant on the external source. Now, some people were born, with various, I don't know if you want to call them disorders or whatever. I mean, some of them are. Some of them are, I have NF2, I have a genetic disorder, but that doesn't necessarily affect on how I get sick. It might for some, but it doesn't affect my immune system. It affects the nervous system. And yeah, a lot more to it, but yeah. Um, but then you also have people who have autoimmune disorders. You have people who have other issues where their body naturally doesn't produce enough, say, vitamin D or, what have you. And so they end up being prescribed certain drugs to help replace what the body isn't producing. That's where, for like those with autoimmune disorders, a lot of them, that's where vaccines come a big time for them. Because their body doesn't produce the proper proteins to recognize when something's invaded the body. And so it can sometimes attack itself versus doing what its job is, and they definitely would need an external source to help boost that. Where most people who have a healthy, good immune system don't need to rely on those external sources necessarily. You get your base external source kind of when you're born from your mom, and then I know when I was a kid we had about 14 vaccines that was required. I think it was of people's kids. A lot of them were, it's between 7 and 14 because it's gone up a lot. Because now it's like up in the 20s, and most of those are multi-vaxes where they've got multiple. They deal with multiple diseases and viruses. Where like my parents' generation, I think they only had to have like maybe 5 or 6. But anyways, we all know that, well, going from what I was saying, about the chemical equivalencies, and the body's starting to rely on external sources. We see that a lot in a lot of that explanation within drug addictions and stuff like that, as I was saying. But then I think people forget that for every street drug that is out there, there is a pharmaceutical drug that is equivalent to it or is the same thing. It's just one's been given a professional name, I guess. The other one's a street name. I don't know how you would put it, but in the end, the more you start relying on those external sources, your body starts to slack off doing its job because it knows that in those times that it needs to be producing those chemicals, it's, as I was saying, it already recognizes that it's going to have an external source replacing it. So it's going to eventually probably start becoming, let's say, delayed. And then eventually it just gets weak because it's becoming reliant on external sources. And I don't believe it would just, a vaccine type thing. And I don't believe it with, say, like Ritalin. It's supposed to replace some of the chemicals in some people's brains to help, balance them or help kickstart the production. It just depends on what it is, but all of them have them. And it doesn't always make it bad, but there's a place. I know that something that people are familiar with too is when, say, your body's, let's say it's low on iron, you start to crave, meat or other, foods that might have high iron to it. Let's say you're starting to crave, proteins, things that your body's deficient of, and it tells you. And you're going, damn, I'm craving this, and you don't know why, but it's a good chance that you're deficient at that moment, and your body's saying, hey, you need to put more in here because it doesn't have the energy, and it doesn't have the source to produce it anymore. Basically, it needs to be refueled. So in my thoughts, I mean, if you're kind of sticking with me on this, I know I'm a little, all over the place. I'm trying my best. I think I start to question how many people out there who, because I noticed compared to when I was younger, even as a teenager, they didn't have certain things advertised and pressed in our face so badly. But anytime you go past the Walgreens, you got flu shots, cold shots, and everything else sitting out there like it's a McDonald's Happy Meal sale going on. Because people have become, in general, so reliant on these external sources, it has made me wonder if, as a human genome, we're not actually weakening ourselves as a species. Because we're becoming chemically reliant on so many things. And I don't think we're really putting a whole lot of thought to that. I guess another good example would be, people out there who kind of sat and ate processed food for a long time. And at first it tastes good, it feels good, you think it's doing the same thing as, organic food, whatever. But over time you start to feel it dragging you in the ground. And you go, maybe I need to change what I'm eating, change my diet. And you do so and you start feeling better again. It's because you're relying more on a natural source of that intake. And, when we look at even multivitamins are full of clays and, other stuff, that's just fillers. There's very few out there that are actually 100%, this or that, whatever, for multivitamin. Or even just regular vitamins at that, But we're all taught, since we're children, hell, everybody can admit, they sit back and go, oh, pot's not a gateway drug. The gateway drug is the drugs that our doctors prescribe to us. Now think about that for a while. If that's going to be, everybody has, I think to some degree, recognizes that. Others might be, oh, my first drug was coffee, or alcohol, whatever. I don't care. But in the long run, in general, most people recognize that our doctor was the first person to prescribe us any form of drug, and that's the first drugs we've ever done. Those were our gateway. Because even as kids, we recognized that certain painkillers made us feel good. But what I'm getting at, though, is a majority of people out there who grow up throughout their lives are taught that, it's along the lines of, if you go to school, go to college, get a good degree, and get a good job, blah, 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 blah. It's the same thing with the medical aspect. What we've done is we've kind of, in general, taught ourselves that anytime we get a sniffle, a sneeze, a cough, a temperature, anything like that, we immediately have to go to the doctor. Like, we can't treat ourselves. Like, we can't do it without a doctor. There's the old jokes of, men are wieners when they're sick, but women are the tough ones. I think these days I can't tell the difference for most. I'm watching a lot of people kind of become drug pushers themselves for the medical industry, and it's actually pretty unfair to those that they're not even thinking about outside of themselves. There's a lot of people out there who can't take these drugs and these shots because they're deathly allergic to common ingredients used within them. So for some of you out there who are pushing it like you are, and like we see on the media and all that, how many of you think that everybody on this planet can have penicillin? Could you imagine that being mandated, and the excuses, it's for your health, it's for the care for the public health, knowing it's going to kill a lot of people who are deathly allergic to it? There are common ingredients used in these shots that people are just as allergic to as the next person would be to these different psyllians or whatever antibiotics. A lot of these people who are allergic doesn't mean they're unhealthy. It just means their body doesn't react to it the way you would hope it would. So you see my cardboard right there next to my fireplace. It's bad. But I stock up for winter a little bit, because that's what we use to get the fires going. We rely on wood heat here. But I don't think people are thinking this whole thing through. And when you start looking at things in a different light, going, wait a minute, why is it that even though this person can't have this stuff, why is it that they're not getting sick all the time? Well, because some of us, since we can't have those prescriptions or the various drugs that a doctor can give you to help you get through being sick, we're a lot of times might even be stuck just dealing with the lesser of evils, in essence, with the over-the-counter shit. But in general, a lot of us deal with it probably the same way, our great-grandparents would. Some would joke about taking cocaine, but that's not something I would suggest. But, like myself, it's drink a lot of tea. Get those antioxidants and all that stuff in there. And there's vitamins in your tea. Make sure you eat right. And if you're in a place where you don't get a lot of sun, and your body's one of those people whose bodies don't produce a lot of vitamin D very well either. You got to be taking, that. You got to be taking some of these things that, granted, you're having to help boost, but don't rely on it. It's not something you take every day. Some people do. But in the long run, you get a majority of your vitamins and everything else that your body needs from the food you eat, and in other cases, just by being outside, Another thing that I was taught over the years, and I know other people were, is, those who end up with the flu, if you want to get rid of it, you burn it out as fast as you can. Whether you're taking a lot of hot showers, that steam helps clear up your sinuses, they'll help cough out that shit, help sweat it out your pores. And then, although you don't want to go hang out with other people and get them sick, you do something active at home, you burn it out. And then if you end up with a cold, that's when you chill out. That's when you relax, because you don't want that to get into your lungs. Start turning into pneumonia. But in the end, what I'm saying here is I think people need to realize that there's always natural ways to be, healthier and natural ways to actually boost your entire system, unless you're born with, a natural deficiency that your body prohibits you from being able to fight certain sicknesses and all that stuff, which, unless you have things like HIV, autoimmune, other, whether it's sexually transmitted or passed down by birth, things that prohibit your immune system to function naturally. I don't believe that it's smart of people beyond a certain stage to keep relying on external sources, because I get how you need that kind of a boost when you're a child. I mean, how your immune system's at its strongest is when you're a child. But then over time, you can't go, drinking mom's milk as you get older, and a little gross there. But then people start to look to the non-natural external sources, chemical drugs, things that are created in the lab. I mean, how many people out there I've probably seen, especially over this last year, who in the past talk about, anti-GMO, anti-this, that, all natural and all that stuff, but now they're running to something to be injected with. That in the long run, the reason why most of these things take so long to be approved is because they need to know the long-term effects. Long-term effects is what happens in the course of a decade, not 10 months. I'm not against anything like this, but I'm against the fact that people want to mandate and force it onto others. And I don't believe they really put thought into what they're doing. They want to say it's for health care for everybody, but what they're going to do is they're going to get a bunch of people murdered. And then those same people, if they don't take the needle, they're going to be eventually told that, hey, you can't get a job. You can't buy stuff. You can't buy your food. You can't, so what you need to pay your bills because you lost your job because you can't have that shot. And eventually, you lose everything. So, I mean, what people are doing is you're mandating two choices for a large number of people, and you call it healthcare. They have a choice. They can be euthanized by this, or they can starve to death. But that's what we call healthcare in this country. So, I mean, yeah, I'm a little bit all over the place. I've been a little bit irritated with some of this because I'm one of those people that I am allergic to. I'm definitely allergic to a lot of pharmaceuticals, including the vaccines, because they have a common chemical that I'm allergic to. And I'm not telling people not to go get one. I'm not telling people to go get one. I believe that's individual It's an individual's choice. I mean, every day you walk out your door, you're putting your life in the hands of the hundreds and thousands of other people that you go by every day. I mean, every day you walk out your door, you have a 50-50 chance of dying, but you're afraid of something that you have about a 1%, depending on your age grouping and how healthy you are. You notice the people that it affects more in the age group of the elderly is people between 65 and 80. But the natural human life expectancy is about 78 years old. It doesn't mean I don't want people to be able to live longer. It's just that's how life works. It's just how it's been. It's how the human genome functions. At a certain point, we just grow old and die. And sadly, our age plays a factor in how certain things happen. It's not something that we want to see our grandparents go through, but it's a reality that each and every one of us are going to go through. And it's not going to be just this fucking thing going around. It's not going to be the only threat that we have to worry about. I think people have been not just weakening over the years of constantly relying on these external sources of drugs to replace what their body can normally do on its own. I believe they're weakening their immune systems. I believe they're doing a number of things in this process. It's not just what you're eating, not exercising, that type of thing. You know, when you look at those, when they bring up those who are young that still die, there's two big things that play a part in that. And go look at every one of them. You're going to find two major things. One, they either had another serious health issue that was underlying that this virus brought out, or in combination. But then when you look at the rest, you know, I struggled with obesity myself over the years, low thyroid, that type of crap. You know, I get it. And the way I had to combat a lot of that, because I couldn't, you know, take all these fucking drugs. I mean, over time, they start fucking with your head. If they're prescribing you stuff that it's for something that you don't have, it starts to fuck with your body. Because it's not treating even the symptoms at that point. It's actually going to start creating them. And so, trying to keep on track here a little bit. And so, when you look at these younger folks, like I said, it's either a combination of things. There's underlying, or there was, you know, a known health issue that the two in combination caused a problem. The other main one is that if you look at all these kids that have gone outside of the combination of health factors, almost every one of them has been overweight. There's a certain point, I guess, you know, when you're too skinny, and there's a certain point when you're too fat. As blunt as that sounds, I really hope that makes sense. There's healthy weight out there. I mean, you could even, you know, some of these people out there who walk around with damn near 0% fat are not going to be as healthy as the people out there who probably have 10% fat in their body. You know, I can tell you right now, when it comes to a survival situation, those people with no fat in their body are probably going to be the ones that become the weakest first. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors that play against those who are visually over healthy versus those who are actually, when you see them, not just physically unhealthy, it's a little legitimate thing. I mean, it's hard for me to bring some of this up because a close friend of mine for years, who was very much a sister of mine, her weight killed her. And it's something I still deal with even after about a decade. But we need to stop. I think as a species, we need to stop relying on these synthetics, these chemical-based crap to make our lives better, you know, whether health-wise, food, anything like that. You know, everybody sits back and goes, oh, I believe in eating organic, but for about all natural, you're a hypocrite the moment you put something like that in your body. Especially the new stuff, because there's nothing natural about it. And give you a list of things to look up, and every one of them you could verify yourself. But the point of this whole thing is, I think, as a human genome, is we're replacing what our body can do naturally with things externally. We think we are separate from nature itself, as if like we're the ultimate caregivers, when really we can't even take care of ourselves. As a species, we can't, because we're too busy fucking ourselves up and each other up. I get that we want to better ourselves as a species, but this really isn't the way to do it. And a lot of people can agree that when you start relying on these unnatural sources, it usually does bad things for your body in the long run. And if our bodies can't develop these immunities naturally on their own, let's say you're one of those people who don't have kids and you want kids. If you don't naturally produce that immunity in your system, that it becomes a permanent immunity, you don't pass that on to your kids. And when you have to take something every 3 to 6 months, is that truly immune? Because I can show you something right now. And it's not hard to do. All you have to do is just go right here online. And let's go here. Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Immune. Not susceptible or responsive. Having a high degree of resistance to a disease. 2A. Produced by involved in or concerned with immunity or an immune response. B. Having or producing antibodies or lymphocytes, I can't pronounce that right, capable of reacting with a specific antigen. 3A. Marked by protection. Is there anything in there that says when you're immune that if you're immune, it means you can't get it? And if you got it, what your body does is it takes that and starts producing the antibodies needed to fight it, and it becomes embedded into your system. Basically, your system puts it into a memory bank. So then anytime that bacteria, virus, etc. gets into your system, your body knows what to do every time. So you don't have those severe effects. You realize there are viruses and diseases that we obviously know didn't exist when people from Spain, France, England first start coming here and start bringing the various, at that time, foreign diseases. And you saw how that affected the Native American population. It was bad. But in the long run, the Native Americans that are alive today can live through the viruses that they couldn't in the past. And it was because their ancestors went through that. It wasn't a good thing. But in the long term as a species, let alone for our own families, not just ourselves directly and our kids directly, but also our descendants, our bloodlines. It is good that we allow ourselves to be able to form these immunities naturally, because when you start replacing it with a chemical equivalency, your body's not gonna, it doesn't need to remember it. It doesn't need to store that, really, especially for any long periods of time. And when they're injecting you every 3 to 6 months, what do you think you're doing? Is that truly immune? That's not immune. They admit it to your face that it's questionable on how it works. They say it every day. Whether you get stuck or not, you're still gonna get the shit. But what does immune mean by definition? It means you can't. Otherwise, it means that once you've got it, you won't ever get it again. So why would you need to keep getting a needle shot every 3 to 6 months? I know this whole thing kind of started off with kind of chemical equivalencies and so forth, but it's still in that fashion. But I kind of have a little bit of, I think like the next person, I don't have the issue with the vaccine, whether people take it or not. That's their individual right and choice. If it's something that will help you feel like you're going to be safer tomorrow, do it. Even if we hear it numerous times a day that various people still get sick, we hear numerous times a day that it doesn't protect you, that you have to have boosters. I mean, you saw the Michael Rappaport video. That was kind of funny. It's kind of weird as he made me think of his old character from the movie Higher Learning. His character Remy. Guy's still a good actor, but the way he presented himself through all this and some of these others, I'll just say that I'm kind of happy I don't know them in real life, and it would probably be vice versa too. But you've been given every bit of information to really realize this. Don't turn this into Common Core math. You've been given it by the people who tell you that this virus, what this is and how bad it is. Those same people tell you that even though it's supposed to make you immune and we're looking for herd immunity, it's not going to make you immune. How do you get herd immunity if you're not becoming immune? And the whole herd has to be injected every 3 to 6 months as if they were cattle. You got to make sure that, they develop properly, I guess, right? I think people need to really start thinking it outright and through, and stop allowing fear to be the factor to not just control you, but it's also the weapon you are using too.